watched Titane. It was Alex's idea. I went into it like, you're going to have to fix this for me. And about halfway through...
Yeah, you were much more apprehensive than me going into it. And then it flipped, for sure. Yeah, I could barely handle most of this movie.
Yeah.
I had to stop a lot.
Yeah.
But
and you carried us through.
Yes.
Forced us through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You forced us through the whole running time, which was excruciatingly long for me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't trust that the director had any respect for the human spirit.
Right.
And so when a movie starts the way this movie starts, I don't expect these gruesome means to come to any good ends.
Right.
But they did.
So it did what I was expecting. Were you not expecting that?
What were you?
Like, in terms of the gruesome beginning. That's what I was expecting. It was more than you anticipated?
I don't know. The synopsis that you go into this movie knowing is that this chick is a serial killer who fucks a car. And so, and with the like bright neon kind of promo images of the movie, like, I guess I thought it'd be more aesthetic and sexy and less just pure distortion and body horror and terrible...
Fucking a car doesn't sound like body horror to you?
Yeah, I was very frightened of what that moment would be, and then that was the most tame moment in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what I was expecting.
But you weren't expecting the body horror as we witnessed it.
I don't know, even going into the movie I started feeling really apprehensive. Like I knew, I don't know, I just was excited to pick it because like it's so glaringly on theme of Beauty and the Beast. To have a exotic dancer unite with a car.
Yeah.
I was just excited at like a new movie playing into what we're focusing on. And then the closer we got to the movie, the more I was like, oh God, no.
Yeah. So,
what have I done?
As it was starting, I was going like, Alex, it's everything you love. It's like cool, like visual, like lighting, like color scene happening and moving through in a continuous shot, this car scene, and just like a super hot girl, a bunch of hot girls like dancing on cars, just like
boobs everywhere, beautiful cars.
And it just culminates in like the most intense dance that the main character, Alexia, is doing on the car. And and so then you were like, I was going, Alex, this is your movie.
Yeah, trying to tell me this is all my favorite things.
Yeah, it's all your favorite things. But I didn't know that you had such a discomfort with body horror. I guess there's some in my mind, like you can enjoy scary movies and just the heavy metal thing and like hanging around people that will like share on Instagram a body horror kind of art thing. I just figured, so that was surprising to me. Like I could handle it more than you could.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting.
Well, I've noticed that repeatedly too, that women can handle the body horror more than at least me.
Yeah. Really, like the most beautiful image. There's like some beautiful images of like the firefighters' male bodies, but
Yeah.
where she's like a beautiful woman is when she's like dancing on the car, and I was really feeling the way that maybe that was like the most uncomfortable part for me. And like, yeah, I've been thinking about the nature of like dancing like that and why it's uncomfortable to me. Because I don't think it's just the fact of like a woman being sexy. Like, I can really appreciate that, but I think there's something like intensely masculine about dancing in that way.
Yeah.
And it's not. Yeah, it doesn't feel sexy to me. It's very aggressive.
Yeah, it's so aggressive and so overt.
Yeah.
And what makes things sexy is veils and mystery and allure.
Right. So that was like really interesting for me to see, like, within the context of this movie, I could see that more, like why I feel that way in general, because you see shit like that online or something.
Right. Yeah.
But that was really interesting for me. And there's a lot of like moving from that place. There's just a lot of gender dynamics through the whole movie.
Yeah.
She like, yeah, goes from looking like total woman to like all kinds of different strange combinations of things.
Yeah. She makes a general transition from a woman to a man. But that man that she becomes is pregnant with the karma of her choices as a woman. Just to kill a bunch of fucking people and also let a car impregnate her. But I think so the movie did come to a happy ending, and it was a tragedy for her. She birthed the chimera, and so the mother died. But turning into a man was like the peak of her inflamed trauma. Like her injuries and her rage and her trauma and her pain like distorted her to the completely other gender.
Yeah.
But she still had like being a woman was still inside of her every time she took off her clothes in the bedroom by herself. She's visibly pregnant. And the firefighter was the Taming the Beast character here, who, like her injuries and her rage have inflamed her into a fucking monster of hatred.
Yeah.
And so it's a firefighter that damps down the flames.
Right.
And
she's like
heals her.
Literally spouting oil, and he's like.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she's like starts killing by killing a guy after her dance show that tries to kiss her, and then she just kind of starts killing everybody after that, and she sets her parents' house on fire, and that's like when it really goes to hell. And then she ends up in the firefighter's house, and he's like adopting her like his son, and she's kind of pretending to be his son, and at the same time she's trying to escape. And there's this really beautiful moment where he starts dancing with her, and like it feels so vulnerable because you're just looking at him and like the goodness of what he's trying to do and how devoted he is to her, and he's like so vulnerable in that moment. And like,
because every single meeting she's had so far has ended in murdering them.
Yeah, and she'll even like hug them or be in some kind of intimate, sweet moment with them, and like that's the moment that she kills them.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you're watching him, and it's like maybe like the sweetest thing that's happened in the movie so far, and it's like
by far.
so tense because it's so precious.
Yeah.
But there's like this, it's the image of devotion, which is the Beauty and the Beast thing, you know? It's like...
And then she does try and kill him, and he just disarms her and makes fun of her.
And fights her.
And goes on with it. Like, no,
like,
we're still going.
But he carries on, like, their dancing becomes, like, roughhousing more.
Yeah.
And that's, like, what she needs, and it's really beautiful because then through, like, living in this firefighter world and, like, being with the other young firefighter guys, she, like, kind of gets, like, tossed around by them. There's, like, a couple, like... There's, like, a mosh pit scene.
Yeah.
And you can feel how, like, that's what she needed.
Right. So, and she's become a man at this point, and is pretending to be a man in the firefighter half of the story. And, like, where before she was a grown-ass woman, like, she visibly looks like a small, scared boy now in all the firefighter scenes.
Yeah.
So you can see how, like, inside of her this whole time was this scared little boy that has no way to process the traumatic things of childhood, as maybe a boy would roughhouse a lot more to get all that out of their system.
Yeah. There's this great part where it's right in the beginning of this kind of adoption with the firefighter dad, where she tries to escape. She gets on the bus, and there's, like, her seated on one side of the bus with the shaved head, and she looks so fucked up. Her face is all screwed up, and she looks like a drugged out, fucked up man.
Yeah.
And then a beautiful black girl sits down on the other side of the aisle and, like, has the hair and the earrings, and she's kind of just, like, feeling herself, and then you can just see the intense contrast of, oh my god, she is not a woman anymore. Like, that's kind of what a woman looks like, and she, like, that woman thinks she's a man, and, like, she feels more like a man, you know? And, and then the next thing that happens is a group of guys go to the back of the bus behind them and start being just totally grotesque and
like
sexual harassment.
The classic cinema stereotype of vulture guys.
Yeah. And so the black girl starts looking at him, like, thinking, like, almost kind of wanting him to defend her, maybe. Like, there's kind of this, like, question of, like, you look like a man, like, what are you gonna do about this?
Yeah.
And she gets off the bus and, like, returns to the firefighter house.
Well, she goes back to the firefighter house to kill the firefighter.
Yeah, maybe.
No, literally. That's what happens in the next scene, is he's drugged out and can't defend himself, and she bends down next to him to prepare to kill him, and then she can't.
But the thing that happens instead is she holds him and, like, thinks he's already dead, maybe, and then, like, he's, like, comes back to life from that return, which is, like, a Beauty and the Beast kind of return.
It is, yeah. Well, she thinks she's coming back to, like, she can't do anything about the vulture guys, but they represent everything she's all fucked up about. So she goes back to the home.
Yeah.
She doesn't know she's going back to, like, return to the fold. She thinks she's going back to, like,
be engaged in something she can do
kill
something
the thing
about.
at its source.
Yeah.
And she can't. And then I think she knows he's alive and just resigns herself to nursing him back to health.
Yeah, it's in the moment that he's, like, I think he's, like, possibly dying. There's, like, an unclear... Yeah, and she holds him for a while, and then she leaves him there and tries on this yellow dress. And that's, like, a moment of seeing her again as, like, feminine, and you, like, see her pregnant belly in this floral yellow dress. And I think... for me, there's not really femininity in this movie at all. And that was, like, this one glimmer of femininity, and I feel like that glimmer of femininity, like, brought him back to life. It's like she,
Sure.
like, yeah, like looked at her pregnant belly in the dress, and like there was some like love in that moment.
Yeah.
And that was like what allowed the positive masculine to reemerge in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I was glad it ended up in a loving place. It was the amount of hatred and torturous pain and distortion was really, really difficult for me to sit through. Well, what else?
It's just so interesting for me to witness like this reaction, because to me it's like I was saying about there's like black oil coming from her, like that would come out of a car engine, right?
Yeah.
And like she's like, first it's between her legs, and then it's like coming out of her nipples, and then it's like she's like bleeding black oil.
Yeah.
And you were like saying how grotesque that was, and I was saying like, well, it's fulfilling like an alchemical principle like you talk about with heavy metal. Like a pregnancy can feel like an intrusion, and so what does that really mean if you carry that all the way through? Like the kinds of fluids, the effect it has on the body, like if you really give a full picture to that, like that's what it might look like.
It just like those points were easier to handle, like seeing just the step by step of giving birth to a car baby.
It's disgusting.
Just the moment to moment tension and pain, torturous pain of like knowing she's pregnant and has to hold it in. It's like the most terrible thing I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and her face is just the image of she ruined her own face.
Yeah.
And she's the star of the fucking movie, so you gotta just look at that. And like every single thing, she's so vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so that like makes everyone around her unknowingly super vulnerable too.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's just a classic horror movie thing. You never know when the next bad thing's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So it's partly just hard to watch for that. Just the tension of something monstrous around the corner the whole time. I wonder what it is I could put my finger to in the portrayal, but it seemed obvious from the very first moments and the very first things the firefighter says to the girl that he's the first like trustworthy figure in the whole movie. But it was clear immediately, and I was like afraid for him, afraid that this monstrous fucking pain monster was gonna tear him apart.
Yeah.
But you could immediately tell that, I don't know, he just didn't have the hatred and resentment of every other character in the film up to that point.
Yeah, he was just like this force of love.
Yeah.
And after she kind of holds him, and I think spiritually that she kind of saves him, he gets her in on saving someone else's life in their firefighter mission, and that's a redemptive moment for her.
Yeah. Yeah, that was nice.
It's funny to me that you've had this reaction, because in relation to the body horror thing, this is like a transhumanism film. Which is something you love.
I'm glad you're so happy today. This is the I told you so day.
I think something that really is satisfying for me about this movie, but I am sorry that you're reacting the way you are. But I think it's satisfying for me to see this because this is the like full like end result of like certain aesthetics and like trends and like glimmers of certain philosophies that like, you know, that really rub me the wrong way. And like this is satisfying for me to see because I'm like, yeah, this is what that leads to. Like
yeah, it's a fantastic film in that way, in that it starts with the base assumptions of the liberal first world of, well, you hate men and you feel incredibly resentful, and
that women should be like intensely masculine in this way.
And women should be intensely masculine and like not just punch Nazis, but like the basic like hyper masculinity under that of just hatred itself. That it starts with like just banking on the audience's understanding of that as that aesthetic and that worldview,
Right.
and just making you think you're just in a revenge flick. Like that was kind of all that Girl Walks Home Alone at Night was just like revenge fantasy for a girl walking home alone at night.
Yeah.
And then this did like
promising young woman. Yeah.
and then this did a twirly-do of like starting you there of she's taking revenge on all these disgusting men, and then very quickly showing you like, no, it's just revenge itself is just disgusting, and it turns you into a monster, and that's it. It's just torturous pain and flames of hatred, and then I hit pause on it because it's so intense, and I see that we're only 1/3 of the way through the fucking film, and that's where I was pleading for mercy.
Yeah, and that's where I came in and said no mercy.
Because I didn't have any faith that the director wanted to do anything with that display of grotesque distortion, and just step by step the movie introduced the healing figure.
Yeah, I think...
And healed the thing.
Yeah. Why did I have some faith that anything good could happen? I mean, partly just that thing I said of it was just satisfying for me to see, like, this is, like, all of these aesthetics and beliefs taken to their logical conclusion. Like, that was just satisfying for me. And then I think the fact that it was so long and got so bad right at the beginning, it just...
There was no, like...
Like, where else can you go, you know?
You had already, like, faced the worst thing.
Yeah.
And so there was just curiosity after that point.
Basically.
Yeah, and I think you knew, like, I took us here, so then I think you kind of felt an opportunity to understand some Alex thing.
Yeah, totally.
So I had to carry us both through the whole thing. I hated it so much.
So we've talked about transhumanism a lot, and I think, like... God, I don't have a very good handle on this subject. Let me think for a second. Like, a part of the gender conversation has become a transgender conversation, and then transgender posters will kind of talk about transhumanism, and so I'm kind of relating the gender trans thing happening in this to transhumanism. Like, I'm seeing...
She, like, gives birth to a new species, this car human thing, and so that's the transhumanism. And then in the transgender conversation itself is this postmodern you can say whatever narrative you want, and then you can use technology to surgically turn your body into what you say you are now.
Right.
And that is transhumanist, that you can just get into the code of what you are at every
Right.
level
Right.
and use technology to just make any adjustments you want.
Right.
And so the ideal of that, in my mind, is to become something more human than the human could achieve without a computer's help. And then what I take issue with is using the potentials of technology to erase and negate,
Right.
and thinking you can grow by negating what you are at the root.
Yeah. So, like, a symbol of that is like she hates men. She's literally fucking a car instead of a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's like a monstrosity born from rejection of an aspect of the human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, she's rejecting that aspect of the human, and so it's spilling out in distorted form in every action of hers.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
the denial of the masculine is turning her into this hyper-masculine monster.
Right. Yeah, there's ways that she is being really masculine, but, like, she's not expressing positive forms of the masculine. Like, obviously, the firefighter dad is intensely masculine.
Mm-hmm.
When you're, like, watching his muscles, you could say, like, he's hyper-masculine, but, like, it's definitely not in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a very positive, like, life-giving way. How do you feel about it now? How are you?
Oh, how do I feel about it now? I think it's good that it came to a good ending. I think it's good that whether it was by production limitations or intention, they made the baby mostly a human, just like a superhuman now is implied by like having like bones and skeleton of metal.
Yeah.
Basically, but it's like basically a human form. I think that's the right statement to make. It was just so hard for me to see the illustration of hating men and then men as a proxy for the human form, the human soul being physically expressed into a physical body is like more masculine than like dreaming of the human soul, which is more feminine. So just not only seeing hatred of men illustrated so much when I inherited so much hatred of men growing up, but to see the human form itself distorted so brutally for the whole film was just so fucked up to watch. So many people today are navigating the same theme of narrative that I am with that. So in that sense, like, maybe it's the only film that's been made so far that has had anything honest and constructive to say about this postmodern hatred of self that we're inheriting right now in the cultural air. This hatred of self, hatred of what humans are for the universe, and all our aggressive creative impulses being turned by our negative beliefs in on themselves and distorted into grotesque things that then seem to justify your hatred of the human.
Right.
So in that sense, it's, I don't know if any other movie has like had an honest conversation with all those themes. Partly because all these themes became so vocal and clear only so recently. It's such a strange new area of transhumanism that no one, like, the only conversations that have been vocalized so far about all of it is super ideological, partisan conversations that are just made to inflame some opposition.
Yes. Yeah.
And are very dishonest to get across what that side thinks is the virtue. A lot of dishonesty gets woven into the narrative. And it's using art and dramatizing things to this completely fictional degree that it's able to say something more authentic about what the human spirit is doing right now. And inadvertently voicing universal respect for firefighters.
Yeah, that was good. Just a scene of firefighters dancing and being beautiful. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah. The world needs to see more of that.
It's true.
Yeah.